This is Ryan Finkelstein, the host of Locked On Mets, coming to you from Indiana now on my vacation. And the Mets keep making moves, so this is a little video component before the audio-only show that I had previously recorded, going through Justin Verlander's introductory press conference and the pairing of him and Max Scherzer reuniting for all those years they spent together in Detroit. But the Mets bring back Adam Ottavino. Great signing. Love it. 2 years, $14.5 million. Some performance bonuses he can get in there. He can also opt out after next season. You bring back the second-best reliever from your team last year, 2.06 ERA, piled up the strikeouts in his 66 innings pitched. Great slider, comes back into the mix. He limited his walks with the Mets, where other years past that have been an issue for him. It wasn't last season, so you love it. You love it, and you look at the Mets bullpen right now, I think they could be done. I mean, you bring in Robertson, you bring in Raley, so now you have 4 late-inning options. You still had Drew Smith in the fold. I mean, if you're trying to build out a bullpen, you figure one spot goes to a David Peterson type, or a Tyler McGill as like a long man. It's Diaz, it's Ottavino, it's Robertson, it's Raley, it's Drew Smith. You have one of those guys. You still have Jeff Brigham. You still have Zach Woods, a Rule 5 pickup, who, if they want to keep him, will have to stay on the roster. They like Steven Ridings. They got a lot of depth additions throughout the offseason, Taylor Cicito and William Woods and others. So they've added a ton of depth throughout the offseason. They also have Eleazar Hernandez. I already mentioned McGill and Peterson. You have Lucchesi in the mix as well. So, the 40-man at this point, I believe it's at 42. So some moves have to be made to make all these signings official. But the Mets remain active. They now have 3 shutdown relievers with Robertson, with Ottavino joining Edwin Diaz. Raley, you think, will factor into the mix as well, and he's your left-handed reliever. So, yeah, this Mets bullpen could be complete. And there's also reports today that they were interested in Liam Hendriks. So who knows how crazy Billy Upler wants to get here. But solid signing. Love it. And we'll see what's next for this Mets team. And here is now the rest of a audio-only version of Locked On Mets here, where we discuss Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now, I literally just finished watching the Justin Verlander press conference. I'm actually on another leg of my vacation here. Was in Chicago visiting my sister's family. We'll be heading back there, but took a quick detour to see some cousins and my grandmother over in Indiana. So I was in a Steak and Shake watching the Verlander press conference, and now I'm in the parking lot in the car recording a podcast about what I just saw, and I was fired up. I had a smile ear to ear as I ate my Frisco melt, and seeing Verlander in that Mets uniform, seeing that actually become a reality, it's a great sight. This is a guy that has been one of the biggest stars in baseball for, over a decade. The guy has a resume that, you almost don't need to read, but because it's his first day in a Mets uniform, let's go ahead and just go through it. The Rookie of the Year, all the way back in 2006, he has been a 9-time All-Star, 3-time Cy Young, won an MVP, won the Pitcher's Triple Crown, 2 World Series titles, 2 ERA titles. He won the MLB Player of the Year. He won an ALCS MVP. He has a career 3.24 ERA and 244 wins. He might just be the last pitcher to ever reach 300 wins. And you know what? If things work out swimmingly and he spends 3 years in a Mets uniform, that could just happen in New York. So what an unbelievable day to see Justin Verlander become a Met. And I know that there has been, some skepticism among a pocket of Mets fans just about the age of Justin Verlander. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's hard not to be excited when you see it, really take shape, when you see him put on that jersey, and when you hear about how much he really appreciates what the Mets are doing and how much he wanted to be a part of it. I think that was one of my biggest takeaways here, is just that, Justin Verlander wants to be a Met and was really excited about this. And obviously, the money talks, and that's a big part of it. But this is not just I'm coming here because I'm getting $43 million. Obviously, yes, that's part of it. But these guys can't fake their enthusiasm about what the Mets are building. And it all goes to Steve Cohen, okay? If you want to look at the Mets right now and say they're buying a championship, you know what? The reality is they kind of are trying to, okay? Steve Cohen has said money's not an object. I want my team to be competitive. And based on the organization he inherited and the lack of depth in the farm system, having contracts on your books like Robinson Cano and others, you are in this boat where you just have to spend to keep the team competitive, and that is what he's done. And, Justin Verlander bluntly said that. What really convinced you? Steve Cohen. And they hit it off in their first conversation. He said it wasn't just about baseball or money. It was about his vision for making the Mets a championship organization, and Verlander bought into that. Billy Epler also made a big note in this press conference about the fact that Verlander chose to sign first, and that was a leap of faith for him to trust the Mets and trust that, the team that they would build around him, and of course Max Scherzer and the other guys that were already in place like Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor, that they would be able to get all the other pieces back in shape here with all the free agents the Mets had. I mean, you look at free agency up to the point that Verlander signed, all they had done is bring back Edwin Diaz. Then they sign Verlander, and then the snowball starts rolling down the hill there where they get Quintana. They make the move, and they get Brooks Raley. They sign David Robertson and Brandon Nimmo. They end up getting Nimmo back in place. And now you're looking at this team, and while there's still more that has to be done, you'd still like them to get a little bit better offensively. There's some pieces you'd like to move out. A bullpen that maybe needs to be rounded into shape a little bit more. Justin Verlander could look up in a press conference today and say that he's thrilled where the Mets are and is excited to compete for a championship and really believe that. And so I think that this is a really great day for the New York Mets to see that new duo come together that is an old duo in Verlander and Scherzer. To see the excitement on Billy Epler's face with all these press conferences that he's able to do and the moves that Steve Cohen allows him to make. He's got the most entertaining and exciting executive job maybe in sports right now. Go out, play fantasy baseball, and spend like crazy. And he's done that, and that's what got you Justin Verlander. But this is a proven winner. You can say what you want about the World Series stats. How about the Mets get to a World Series, and then we worry about what Justin Verlander looks like in that World Series? Because the Mets have been to only a few World Series since 1986. Obviously 2015 didn't go well. 2000 didn't go well since the turn of the century. But they got there a few times, and they have been able to get it done. Let's see the Mets get there. Let's see the Mets do something that they've only done a couple times in franchise history also, which is make it to the playoffs in back-to-back years. That is a rarity for the New York Mets. Happened in 15 and 16. We'll see if they can do 2022, 2023. Otherwise, it would be a massive disappointment. You still got to play the games, but Justin Verlander is a proven commodity. The way he takes care of his body, he spoke about how he had that core injury in 2014 that really kind of put his career in jeopardy a little bit, where we weren't sure if Verlander was going to be the same Verlander, and he worked through it. He stopped putting so much strain on his arm. He talked to other people who had more information than him. He stopped being so stubborn. In his own words, he was able to trust all these other people to really lengthen his career. It's worked out for him very well. Obviously, there was the Tommy John surgery, but you can look at it in a couple ways. You could say, yeah, that's a recent injury, or you could also say, look, he's got a new elbow, and that elbow looked great this past season when he pitched to a sub-2 ERA, leading Major League Baseball in ERA, leading Major League Baseball in WHIP, something he's done in 3 of the last 4 full seasons that he pitched. And the bottom line here is the Mets have an ace now, along with Max Scherzer, their other one, that they can trust and that they feel confident going into the next season that he's going to be able to take the ball every 5th day. And as much as I love Jacob deGrom, because anyone who listens to this show knows that, there is definitely less of an injury risk here with Verlander than DeGrom going into the season. And then long-term, as we've already discussed with the contract, a 2-year deal with that vesting option, a lot less risky than a 5-year deal with DeGrom with the 6th-year vesting option. So I loved everything I heard. I do encourage any of you to check that out if you have yet to watch the presser. But really good stuff from Verlander, and now it sets up a situation where it will be Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander leading the Mets in 2023, which if we thought that would be possible, or if someone tried to tell you that was going to happen 3 or 4 years ago, you would have said you are out of your mind. But that is the world that we are living in with Steve Cohen's Mets. We're going to get into, though, what Scherzer and Verlander will look like together in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those there at BetOnline as well. Right now, the Mets plus 900 to win the World Series. If you want to bet on that, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander are going to be the most exciting duo in baseball this year. Yeah, I said it. Even though they're in their late 30s for Scherzer, early 40s, or just turned 40 or not even quite. He turns 40 in February. I shouldn't sell him short there, Justin. You still got a little bit of your 30s left to celebrate this big contract, but he will be 40 by opening day, and it does not matter to me. Again, just to give you the stats, he led the American League in wins with 18, went 18-4, a 1.75 ERA to lead all of baseball. His ERA plus, which measures pitchers based on a league average of 100, so anything over 100, that's how much better they are than the league average pitcher. Well, Verlander was at 220 last year, so 120% better than your league average pitcher. Again, the best mark in baseball, the whip, 0.829. The fact that every single year his whip has been, the best in baseball recently. It's actually, I said 3 of the last 4 years. The 1 year that it's not, I should have clarified, was 2020. And he only made, a start. So, really it's been his last 3 full seasons. He has led the league in whip, and I'm not just talking about the American League, Major League Baseball. He does not give up a lot of hits. 6 hits per 9 last year. Led the American League in that mark. He still was striking out batters, 9.5 per 9. Won his Cy Young. It's going to be awesome to see him, and you saw what Scherzer did, on the other side of it with the Mets, where Scherzer went out and he pitched to a 2.29 ERA. So you have these two guys who together last season, each of them, pitched to that sub 2.5 ERA. Verlander sub 2, Scherzer 2.29, and when it comes to Baseball Reference WAR, over 11 wins between the two of them last year. If the Mets can get that level of production this season, they're going to win a lot of baseball games. And I think the most exciting element of this, Justin Verlander at 3,198 career strikeouts. Max Scherzer, 3,193 strikeouts. What we're going to see between these two guys is a friendly competition all year long between the two of them. These are the type of focused, insane athletes that want perfection from themselves, that expect to go out and put up zeros, and also expect to strike out every batter they face. And when you have that in kind of the forefront, or maybe not the forefront, but in the back of your mind when you're Verlander and Scherzer, that you're right by each other in career strikeouts, you think that they're not going to be kind of looking at that within each start, how they are so close to each other, where we saw last year, it would be Verlander is the active strikeout leader. Oh, now Scherzer is. Now Verlander is. Now Scherzer is. We're going to see that on the same roster this year. That is so cool. And I think a lot has been made about their relationship. And you've seen some outlets talk about how when they were teammates, they weren't necessarily the best of friends. You have other people that thought, well, this is a reunion, so they must be best friends. one thing that Verlander said in the press conference today is that Scherzer trains with him in Jupiter. So these are guys that actually do work together, in their off seasons. They, as he described it, were boys when they were first trying to grab their foothold in the league together in Detroit, and they've now both matured into men with families who have put up Hall of Fame careers, and they were not able to get the job done to win a World Series together before. Now they're hoping to come full circle and win one at this juncture. Max Scherzer is not the reason that Justin Verlander is a Met right now. He was not a big part of that process, but that does not mean that these guys are not going to form an incredible tandem. I think they're going to feed off each other, and they are going to take their knowledge and pass it down. It does seem like, from everything we watched from Scherzer this past year, he was very open to helping out the rest of the staff. He was very active in the clubhouse. I imagine Verlander, as another big personality, another alpha dog, would be the same way. So you have two leaders in there that have seen everything. They can really guide this pitching staff. You got Kodai Senga now, who wants to learn. That's a pitcher that I think these two can hopefully help in some way. You still have some of the youth on this team, whether it be a Tyler McGill, a David Peterson, even, one of the guys that could come up like a Jose Budo, or even, maybe more towards the latter half of the season if Dominic Hamill can find his way up. There's a lot of pitchers that can benefit from having Verlander and Scherzer atop this rotation, but the bottom line for the Mets is you got two horses to ride through the season and get you to the dance. Now, when you get to the dance, when you get to the playoffs, you just got to see how healthy these guys are, how healthy the rest of the rotation is, and who else has maybe kind of established themselves to give the Mets a third and a fourth starter that you want to hand the ball to in the postseason. Obviously, right now, you'd assume it would be Kodai Senga, and you would think it would be a Jose Quintana, if not Carrasco or Peterson. But we'll just see how the season plays out. For now, though, what you know that you can count on is two first-ballot Hall of Famers atop your rotation. That is thrilling for Mets fans, and I just can't wait for spring training to start so we can actually watch it play out firsthand here. But what is the ultimate goal of this team? Obviously, it's a World Series, but how much do Scherzer and Verlander factor in? Is there any world where the two of them don't perform up to the level that we expect and the Mets can still find their way to be a successful team? How much of their season hinges on these guys? I'll discuss that in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by the NHTSA. Did you know that driving high is considered driving under the influence? That's right. Driving under the influence of marijuana is against the law in every state, even states where marijuana is legal. That means driving high could get you a DUI. If you think law enforcement officers can't tell when you're driving high, you're wrong. Your friends can tell, your coworkers can tell, even your parents can tell. Everyone can tell. So what makes you think that a law enforcement officer does not know when you're driving high? Driving under the influence of marijuana can slow your response time and change how you perceive time and speed. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're high, you're not, because the bottom line is, if you feel different, you drive different, and driving high is driving under the influence. So remember, drive high, get a DUI. How much of the Mets' success hinges on Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander this season? Obviously, a lot of it, but what they have done here is you just need to have at least one of them be great. Because what do we see this past year? Scherzer was great, DeGrom wasn't there, and the Mets won 101 games. Now, DeGrom did make 11 starts and pitched well down the stretch, but the Mets were already comfortably in a playoff position at that point. And look, Scherzer missed time due to injury too, so I think as long as you get a healthy one of either of these two guys, the stuff is going to play. And the other thing to realize with these guys is, they might not have as hard of a fastball as they once did, but they have so much knowledge. And they're also getting fed so much information that they're able to just outthink these guys and find success. So I am supremely confident that one of the two of them will be successful. I think the only way that this season could really just end up in a completely unexpected place when the Mets find themselves on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs is if both of them are either ineffective or unavailable. And obviously, you would imagine as long as they are available, they will be effective. But you just need at least one of the two. That is why the Mets buy this premium insurance where you're spending $86 million to know that you should always have one of these aces on hand. They have depth with Kodai Senga, with Quintana, with Carrasco, with Peterson, with McGill, with Joey Lucchesi coming back. So they've really shored up a lot of different facets. And you know what? You never know what the Mets might do. I don't think they're going to add another starting pitcher necessarily, but they could add someone who could fill that Trevor Williams-like role, the long man type deal that can do a little bit of both. So again, I think that as long as you get one of them healthy for the full season, this Mets team should be playoff bound. You want both of them to be healthy come October to really make the run and try to get to a World Series. But, now you're really in great shape with these guys. Moving forward, I just think it's about trying your best to add enough offense. And I think they've done a good job, but it's about looking at those prospects you want to have succeed and trying to make sure that you turn over every stone to add offense where you can, whether that be adding another free agent, whether that be making a trade. Apparently the Mets are interested in Liam Hendricks on the pitching side, so that could add another arm to your bullpen. This is a fun time to be a Mets fan, and really there's nothing I would say left to worry about this offseason. Like, you would hope that they could maybe get a little bit better. Of course, we want to see transactions, but they've put themselves in such a great position with what they've done already that you feel pretty good that come spring training, this is a Mets team that will be looking towards the World Series and trying to get there, and they should have every tool they need at Buck Showalter's disposal to try to get there. So we won't know how this signing works out until we get to the season and probably until we get to October. But for now, I'd just be thrilled if I'm a Mets fan, and I would just not worry about his age or, how's he going to hold up this season compared to what he did last year. Trust in the professional that he is, that Verlander will be able to take the ball 30 times next year, or at least over 25. I think last year took 28 starts, so maybe if you get 55 starts from Verlander and Scherzer, the Mets are going to not only be in the playoffs, but very likely be able to win the National League East. Anyway, though, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. We will push the Francisco Lindor episode to Thursday now, where I will dive into the contracts that have been given out and how Lindor's compares to the other top-tier shortstop, because I really do think we're looking at much more of a bargain now than we thought we were when people were calling him overpaid after the 2021 season. But until then, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor.